Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and talk about the events in the world of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack in the last week. And we've had some interesting stuff this week. Some pretty big news in the world of Scientology with that whole protest, but also some other articles you published this week with some legal updates. So I guess we should probably start with those.
Well, now that there's all these lawsuits and they're pretty much all active, I'm just constantly checking the dockets, and there's always new documents coming in. And that darn LA Superior Court just got to charge me so much money. If it's in New York, it doesn't cost a penny. If it's federal, it costs a little bit. But LA Superior Court, just nuts.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry to complain about that, but
No, it's all good. I've had my own run-ins with LA Superior Court when I was doing my divorce. Oh man. Let's just say they really like to pile on the paperwork, which is why I finally had to get it finalized in Minnesota back in the day. So anyway, yeah. Now, speaking of legal shenanigans, so JD1 lawsuit emergency hearing regarding the arbitration. What's this about?
Yeah, so JD1's lawsuit is the forced marriage lawsuit. She's the one that's alleging all those awful things happened to her when she was younger than 8. She was a minor. She wasn't 18, involving the SEAL recruiter named Gavin Potter. And she's alleging that Scientology basically forced her into a marriage, and she considers it sexual assault today. Really awful allegations. And Scientology did what it usually does, and it filed a motion to force that lawsuit into arbitration. They said they had found a contract that Jane Doe 1 had signed in 2002 when she was at Flag. And if you remember, what we reported earlier was that she responded with this long, interesting narrative about how this was not a contract for services. She was at Flag with her friend Lisa Marie Presley, and because they wanted to visit her mom, who was there doing course for something. And Scientology insisted that Jane Doe 1 sign this document simply because she was going to hang around there for a while. And not only was it not for services, and very questionable that way, but after she signed it, nobody from Scientology did. So she raised a lot of interesting issues. And Scientology asked the judge not only to rule on this contract, and that they had at that point, they had it for June or May, but to put the lawsuit on hold until then. And Jane Doe 1 and her attorneys were very much against it. Last week, the judge agreed with Scientology that they should just put it on hold. Jane Doe 1's side said, well, can you at least move it up from May? That's just ridiculous to keep this lawsuit that long. So they moved it up to February.
Right.
And that's not too long. I mean, that's not in court. That's not a very long time. So that was the situation last week. Now, at the last minute on Friday, Jane Doe 1's side filed an emergency request, an ex parte hearing, saying that during that hearing, her attorney had said, well, can we have some limited discovery during that period? And the judge had said, I don't have a motion in front of me of that. So here's the motion. What they're saying is, okay, we understand the lawsuit's on hold until February. You're going to rule on this arbitration idea of whether this contract is valid, obliges her not to sue. But can we at least do a little, investigation of where this document came from and how it came to be? I can understand how they're feeling. They're feeling like before this judge makes a decision on whether this lawsuit should go away or not,
right?
Can't we at least get some more data on this document that Scientology's putting forward? So they want they want a hearing based on that, but the court won't allow them to get a new hearing until August. And of course, by August, all this will be over. So they're asking for an ex parte hearing. They're asking for the judge Monday to look at this and decide whether to allow limited discovery or not. So Scientology, of course, Chris, they always act so offended. I mean, everything I said, I don't know if they're entitled to that. The judge may disagree with them, but they're being respectful and just asking, listen, judge, at the hearing you said this and that. Can we have this? There's nothing disrespectful. There's nothing outrageous. But of course, whenever Scientology answers, and I have to admit, I kind of live for this, they always act so outraged and so offended and so like, oh, I can't believe it. Can you believe these people doing this to us? And so they come back saying, they're not entitled to this. This is ridiculous. And of course, that just amps it all up and makes it even more interesting. What might have been a minor thing now feels like a major battle in this war. And we'll get an answer right away on Monday morning. By the time you air this, Chris, that decision may already be made, and we'll be trying to find out what that is. So just a little glimpse of what you're in for when you sue Scientology. You got to be ready for these battles, and they come up quickly. And wow, I mean, there's a lot, because there is a lot riding on that contract. And you
Yeah.
can't blame Jane Doe 1 for wanting a little more background on how they found it, why it's not signed and all that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that was a
exactly.
little mini battle that took place in the last few days in Jane Doe 1's lawsuit.
Yeah, it sure seems to me that, you would need both signatories on it, but apparently that wasn't the case in another suit too, where Scientology hadn't signed it. They just had the signature of the parishioner, and they had to go to arbitration for that. So I gave up on trying to make this make sense some time ago when it comes to contract law and religion, how these two things are even going together when it comes to how they deal with their parishioners. And it's Scientology having their cake and eating it too, because let's be real, they're a business. The whole religion thing, it's all just it's just a front. The other thing is, just as a little insight, we've commented on this so many times about the language Scientology uses in their responses and the smelling salts and all of that. I was just sort of thinking about this and realizing or thinking this should be commented on, that it's not an act. The lawyers are acting. But right. I'm telling you, inside the world of Scientology, man, these guys are so justified in their behavior. They really, really think of Leah as Hubbard's analogy is a barking dog chasing the fire engine. And they're trying to get the fire out, and here's these barking dogs that they have to contend with and deal with, nipping at their tires and crap, right? That's how they think about this stuff, or at least that's how they try to think about it. And that's why they pour water on everything. It's just, oh my God, again, you're trying to stop us from saving the world again.
Right. That's great. That's a great way to put it. And also, what you're saying makes me realize also, if William Foreman and Matthew Hinks and Jeffrey Riffer sound this put out and this annoyed and this angry about what the other side has filed, what we all have to keep in mind is they're just channeling their boss, and the man screaming at them is so much more angry and annoyed and pissed off. Yeah. And that, of course, is David Miscavige. So David Miscavige is looking at these documents and screaming at them, you've got to knock this down, knock these people into the Stone Age, and they're writing as much for David Miscavige as they are for the court.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it is. And that is how Miscavige deals with this crap. He is brutal, just very impatient. And these guys have been long-term attorneys. I'm pretty sure they're used to it at this point. They probably just like, okay, here we go. All right. Like who knows what their coping mechanisms are for dealing with Miscavige, but
well, I can tell you what their coping mechanism is. It's watching their bank account get
larger. Yeah, I was going to say, but exactly. When you don't have a moral compass, man, cha-ching, 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 away it goes. Okay, now, this is just becoming like carbon copy. I mean, every lawsuit, we end up having to play whack-a-mole with David Miscavige getting served. But the thing that really gets me, and you commented on it, but I just got to say, man, it's like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense that a lawyer shows up for a guy who's named in a lawsuit to tell the judge, sorry, we haven't heard anything about this. How does that, please make this make sense to me?
No, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the whole idea in common layman, sort of sense, The reason that somebody has to serve somebody is you are serving them notice that they're being sued.
Right.
You can't just go to court without the other side knowing they're being, without them knowing, at least having a chance to know that they're being sued. So these process servers, their job is to let David Miscavige know he's being sued, and they can't find him, but they give it to his employees. And then his attorney comes to court and makes what's called a special appearance, which should be, which in other words is, I'm here, Judge, but I'm not really here. You can't see me. And he says, this is not work. You haven't served him properly. Well, the fact that as you point out, the fact that the attorney's there arguing this makes it obvious that David Miscavige knows full well that he's being sued, but that's not how our system works. And so once again, I think the first time I saw this was 10 years ago in Monique's case, when there were special appearances at that point. I became aware of that. I'm sure they've been doing it for far longer. But here we go again. Jeffrey Riffer, David Miscavige's personal attorney, sends in this document in LA saying, special appearance, we're not really here. We just want to let you know that, and again, it's the tone. It's like this outraged, disgusted tone that Leah Remini and Jane Doe 1 sent their process. They sent their process server to Scientology Media Productions. That's not where David Miscavige lives. That's outrageous. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. David Miscavige runs every inch of Scientology. Every single facility in Scientology is where David Miscavige works. So there's nothing wrong with the plaintiffs attempting to serve him there. But then, of course, his attorney comes into court, acts so outraged. Well, how could anybody serve him there? He doesn't live there. He doesn't work there. And then, of course, they don't go the next step and tell you them where he does work is.
Exactly.
Right? They never do that. Never do that. So, I mean, they're just playing games. And in Florida, it didn't work. In Florida, the plaintiffs for Valeska Paris and the Baxters were really, really diligent and sent out lots of process servers and mailed things and got records of everything. They came into court, and the federal court in Tampa did declare not only that they had succeeded in serving David Miscavige in substitute service, they also got a ruling saying that David Miscavige was actively evading service. And so he was named a defendant. But the same day, or I guess that ruling came in and then they appealed it, and then the appeal, he said no. But that day, the judge did grant the motion for arbitration. So it was a Pyrrhic victory because they did get Dave named, but then the lawsuit went away. It's now on appeal at the 11th Circuit, and they're hoping they get it active again. And if they do, they'll have David Miscavige as the defendant. But in LA, whether you're talking the Bixler lawsuit from 2019 or Leah Remini's lawsuit or Jane Doe 1's lawsuit from this year, they're all trying to serve David Miscavige, and we're all still waiting for a judge to say something. When are these judges going to do like they did in Florida and say, yeah, you've done enough? He should know. His attorney's here. My goodness,
Exactly.
But I don't know. I'd like to hear from another attorney if they've ever seen other corporate style figures go to these lengths by sending an attorney to say, nope, you didn't serve us. Nope. I mean, it just seems so ridiculous.
I know it's so like, I don't know. It's so ridiculous. You can't believe people actually can get away with this. But not only can they, Miscavige counts on getting away with this. He'll drag these things out. What, a year and a half just on this one thing, right? And because it's not a criminal case, people might have a skewed view of this because, it's a whole different ball game in a criminal court of law from a civil court of law in the civil case, right? So it's not the same. Like, they don't just send the sheriffs out to go pick you up, and none of that. I see comments like that all the time, and I always laugh because I'm like, what do you think this is? This is a civil case, So you got to play this way. It's a whole different ball game than what we see on TV in criminal court. What a mess. Well, of course, now the big news, the protest. And we talked to Alex on Friday, after the first day, which was an exciting conversation. I've been watching some of the updates from him over the weekend. What do we got on this thing?
Well, let's real quick recap that
Yeah.
David Miscavige has been pretty much holed up in Florida the last 3 years because of the pandemic. And so the idea that he's now coming to England to resurrect the IAS gala that they normally have every October, it's a big deal.
Mm.
And Alex Barnes Ross over there, Apostate Alex, has he got this great idea. Let's have a protest to greet him when he gets here. And what I was, what you and I think were both impressed by once we talked to him Friday night was just not only how well he planned it and got all the proper permissions with the local folks there in East Grinstead with police and everything, but the signs this guy made were so professional and so thoughtful. He had a very specific message for what this protest was about. And they wanted to emphasize that they care about Scientologists. They just want the abuses in Scientology to stop. Really, really well done. And then we got some surprises. I remember, you and I were talking to him Friday night, and he said, "Well, then Tom Cruise showed up in his helicopter." I was like, "Ha ha ha!" And he was telling the truth. So the backstory on that, of course, is that the Daily Mail earlier this year, their entertainment gossip columnist found out that there was, when you fly into certain areas, there's data on that, there's records, and records showed that Tom had not flown his helicopter into St. Hill, into East Grinstead for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. But there was a pandemic going on, and David Miscavige wasn't there.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons why you could talk about that. And if this columnist had just checked in with Mike Rinder, Claire Headley, somebody, then somebody could have told her, well, that okay, it could be several things. One thing is, Dave's not there. There's no IAS gala. There's not really much reason for Tom to go there right now. So
Right.
it doesn't mean anything. But instead of checking with anyone that knew anything about Scientology, she writes a column saying, "Is Tom leaving Scientology?" And there was something about this one. We get that story every 6 months from the tabloids, right? And it's always some unnamed source. I think Tom's trying to get back with Katie, blah, blah. But because it seemed to be based on something, some helicopter data. I think for some reason, this one took hold more than others. And within a few, and the Daily Mail just asked the question, is he leaving? Within a week, fairly large regular news organizations, not fringy ones, on the edges of the internet, were announcing that Tom Cruise had left Scientology. Is it possible? They were saying he's out. Tom's out. Yeah. And I remember at the time thinking, this is the lamest proof I've ever seen. There's no proof.
No.
And so how, what a vindication that on IAS Day, Friday night, when Dave comes in to give his big speech, Tom Cruise shows up in his helicopter.
Exactly.
And the fun thing for me was that Alex was saying the Daily Mail people were there with him. They spotted the helicopter and they were looking for the tail number because they've photographed him before. And the Daily Mail people told Alex, that's Tom Cruise.
Yep.
So, hopefully some of these publications now go back and go, yeah, I guess that previous story wasn't really based on anything. And now this is the best proof you could possibly have that Tom Cruise is definitely still dedicated to Scientology. Well, that was Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
Friday night is the night when Dave gives his big 3-hour speech and says everything's great. And they give out the Freedom Medals to 3, Chris?
2 or 3 people, yeah.
Then Saturday night is really fun because that's the patrons ball. They take out all the chairs, they bring in dinner tables. It's a smaller crowd. They're really dressed to the nines. They're all in black tie. And this time, not only was Tom there, but he was hanging out with people that had smartphones and were taking pictures of him. So right now, there's a ton of pictures on Facebook all over the place of Tom Cruise posing in his tux with all these folks at the Saturday night patrons ball. And Mike posted some really good photos at his website. I've got some others that I'm going to be putting in the morning. So you see people like Tom Cummins. I was wondering if Tom would be there. Tom Cummins is probably their biggest active donor right now, unless if Trish showed up, Trish Duggan.
Right.
Tom Cummins was there. Jim Bridgeworth was there. Some various folks that we're used to seeing. John Wood and Gemma were there, which was really interesting to see them. Were at the so that
Interesting.
midnight was that patrons ball, and then Sunday night is the charity concert. Now, Jenna Elfman had been announced as the MC for Sunday night's charity concert, but I have photos that I'm post. They'll be up by the time you see this. That shows she herself at her own site posted photos of her and Bodie getting dressed up for Friday night, getting super dressed up for Saturday night, because that's the black tie patrons ball.
Yeah.
And so not only did she come to MC the Sunday concert, she showed up all 3 nights. Now, you tell me, Chris, what does it mean to the Scientologists that show up after 4 years since they've had the event there, and Tom Cruise flies in his helicopter, and Jenna and Bodie are there in dressed to the nines? What is that? And all 3 nights. What does that mean to Scientologists?
Just what we were saying the other day. This was we're back, and it's everybody on deck. I wouldn't be surprised if there's celebs we might not know about yet who were there, because this was all hands on deck is what it sounds like, or at least some power players. I mean, when you bring crews around and all the big whales, because you're also mentioning the people who are not necessarily just the celebs. These are the people the celebs are there for. This is we're all here. We're all, here's who's still loyal. Here's who's still showing up. Here's who's still standing with Miscavige and company. And it matters when you show up. And clearly Miscavige made it a big deal, and/or Cruz made it a big deal to be showing up at this. So I think that's why Jenna and Bodie show up, because she's pretty responsive to that kind of thing. Back when Tom Cruise was screaming and yelling at the celebrities, according to what Mark Headley was telling us, she's one of the ones who pulled finger, right? She's one of the ones who opened a mission. She's like, oh, yes, sir. Absolutely,
right.
Sir. How high, sir, right?
Yep.
So she's going to be one of the ones who's going to do that. And clearly, if she's showing up for all 3 days, this was a long planned for, this is how it's going to be kind of thing. So I'm wondering if Nancy Cartwright was there, and whether, some of the other celebs.
I checked Nancy's account and I didn't see anything, but she might be there. And it'll just take a while before we see anything about her.
Right. What we also know about celebs is that that if they don't show up, it's not necessarily a sign of anything, because we need to be cautious, because while this is all hands on deck, let's be clear, celebrities have pretty weird schedules. And when they're on a shoot or on location or whatever, they can't mess with that. Even Scientology can't always get in the way of that. So don't draw any conclusions too quickly from who is and isn't there. But what I'm seeing here is that this was definitely an important event.
And the same thing with the big donors. When Impact Magazine comes out in about 2 months with the photos from this and has the people with their trophies, I always have a lot of fun putting them together. And, oh, look, Tom Cummins is now an Invictus Diamond, or whatever the heck name they call it, for another $10 million. And I'll invariably get questions from people like, where's this person? Where's that person? And the thing about those trophies is you only get a trophy if you've given more since the last time they give trophies, right?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't mean you're not a good donor. It doesn't mean you haven't given millions. You just haven't given another million this year for whatever reason, right? So, and then maybe you have, but you can't make it to the ceremony this time. So I wouldn't draw any conclusions about people not being there for their trophies. All we can do is draw some conclusions about who is there.
Yep.
Because it would be interesting to see if Grant Cardone is there. Is Trish Duggan there? Is Jim Mather's there? We haven't seen him in a while. Did he stop giving or something? We don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. But like I said, we'll know more when they get the new Impact out in about 5 or 6 weeks.
Yep, exactly. And the other one to watch for will be the International Scientology News magazine, because that usually gives a whole blow-by-blow of their events.
The
And
ISN
Mhm.
covers his speech
Yep,
and all the nonsense claims. That's their role. Impact covers the trophies.
that's right.
And
Exactly.
that's what I'm more interested in personally.
Yeah, well, I'm curious about who they're naming as Freedom Medal winners, if they've even got any.
Yeah, they do.
You know, those
I saw people with their they have kind of a rainbow thing on the I saw the people wearing their medals. They definitely
okay,
gave medals Friday night, and then Saturday night the people were hanging out. I just don't know their names. I
right.
didn't recognize them. I think one was Romanian. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing they do is they pick somebody that's, and you can never check on it, right? Oh, this guy in Romania exposed 40,000 people to Dianetics last year. Really?
Right.
Again?
Exactly.
How do we know that? Anyway,
No,
sorry.
and there, no, even internally, I was finding out near the end of my tenure as a Sea Org member that those Freedom Medal winners are created
Yeah.
identities. They're not one man wonders out there bringing Scientology to the forefront of Baja California's prison system and reforming Filipino prison systems and changing America's literacy programs. That ain't what's happening, right? And it's a very big PR machine that goes into play to convince Scientologists and even the Freedom Medal winners themselves that they've actually done all this work, right? So it's it's a funny one, that thing. When I found out how much PR fluff there was underneath that, it's bad. It's really bad. So it'll be interesting to see who they're naming this year. All right. Well, thank you, Tony, for all the breakdown on this stuff this week. Dare I ask, any previews of anything coming up this week?
This week, oh gosh. I think I still want to debrief Alex some more on things that happened on Saturday and Sunday. He said he was going to tell me about that, and
Right.
I think I want to mine that a little bit more, and I think we'll get more photos. I think this IAS thing is going to stay in the news for a while, and I'm also interested to see how the press handles these photos of Tom at the event, and
Yep.
what are they going to say about it. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to this week, along with some other stories I'm working on.
Cool. I still claim, I'm still going to say that helicopter flight coming in was the middle finger to the Daily Mail from Tom Cruise's PR people. I'm saying it. I think that's the case.
You're probably right.
All right. So see you guys next week. Bye-bye.